They had never seen anything like it. A tiny black bear cub separated from his mother during a violent thunderstorm was crying helplessly in the middle of a raging river. Wildlife, rescuers rushed to help. But what happened next defied every law of nature and would change everything they thought they knew about animal cooperation and compassion. Because in that moment in the heart of the Great Smoky Mountains, during one of the worst storms in decades, survival instinct turned into something else, something we rarely witness in the wild interspecies: cooperation, sacrifice, and a kind of heroism that doesn't need explanations before we begin. Subscribe to the channel, hit like, and turn on notifications, because the story you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about the bonds that exist between different species in nature. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park, spanning over 800 square miles across Tennessee and North Carolina, was experiencing one of the most severe and dangerous weather systems to hit the southeastern United States in over 20 years. Meteorologists had been tracking the massive storm front for nearly a week as it moved across multiple states, bringing with it hurricane-force winds exceeding 80 miles per hour, torrential rainfall that exceeded 6 inches per hour, and dangerous flash flooding that threatened both wildlife and human safety throughout the entire Appalachian region. The storm system had originated in the Gulf of Mexico, where it had gathered unprecedented moisture and energy before moving inland with devastating force. Weather experts compared it to hurricane-level conditions, but occurring over mountainous terrain that amplified the destructive potential and created unique hazards for both human communities and wildlife populations. The Appalachian Wildlife Rescue Center, located strategically on the border between Tennessee and North Carolina, had been preparing for emergency operations since the severe weather warnings began. 5 days earlier, the facility represented one of the most advanced and well-equipped wildlife rehabilitation centers in the southeastern United States, staffed by some of the most experienced wildlife rehabilitation specialists, veterinarians, and animal behaviorists in the region. The center had been established 15 years earlier, following a series of environmental disasters that had highlighted the need for specialized wildlife emergency response capabilities. In the Appalachian region, the facility housed state-of-the-art medical equipment, surgical suites, intensive care units, and specialized rehabilitation enclosures designed for everything from tiny songbirds to large predators like bears and mountain lions. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the director of the rescue center, had been working with wildlife for over 18 years and had overseen thousands of animal rescues during her distinguished career. She had earned her doctorate in veterinary medicine from the University of Georgia with a specialization in wildlife medicine, and had completed additional advanced training in emergency response, disaster wildlife management, and bear rehabilitation techniques. Her expertise had been developed through hands-on experience with some of the most challenging wildlife rescue situations in North America, including oil spill responses, hurricane aftermath operations, and large-scale habitat destruction events. She had published numerous research papers on wildlife emergency medicine and was considered one of the leading authorities on bear cub rehabilitation in the eastern United States. Her experienced emergency response team included Dr. Michael Torres, a wildlife veterinarian who had specialized in bear rehabilitation for over 12 years and had successfully raised and released over 200 orphaned bear cubs back into wild populations throughout the Appalachian region. Lisa Rodriguez brought 15 years of experience as an animal behaviorist who worked primarily with orphaned cubs and traumatized wildlife. Her expertise in animal psychology and behavioral rehabilitation had been crucial in developing innovative techniques for helping young animals overcome trauma and develop the skills necessary for successful wild release. David Kim served as the team's wildlife tracking specialist and emergency response coordinator. His background included military search and rescue training and over a decade of experience locating animals in the most challenging terrain conditions throughout the mountainous regions of Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia. The storm had been absolutely devastating for the local wildlife population, with sustained winds exceeding 70 miles per hour that had toppled hundreds of ancient trees throughout the forest, creating massive debris fields that blocked traditional animal travel routes and destroyed countless dens, nests, and feeding areas that wildlife depended on for survival. Heavy rainfall that had continued for over 48 hours had caused multiple streams, rivers, and creeks throughout the region to overflow their banks, creating flash flood conditions that posed serious and immediate threats to animals of all sizes, from tiny ground-dwelling mammals to large predators like black bears, who were struggling to find safe high ground. The Little Pigeon River, which normally flowed gently through the valley, had become a raging torrent, carrying with it fallen trees, debris, and anything else that had been caught in its path. The water level had risen over 15 feet above normal, creating a dangerous and constantly changing landscape of destruction. It was during the absolute height of the storm, around 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon, when the rescue center received an urgent emergency call from Park Ranger Tom Bradley, who had been conducting dangerous emergency patrols to assess storm damage and look for both human and animal casualties throughout his assigned sector of the national park. Ranger Bradley had been working for the National Park Service for over 20 years and had experience with every type of weather emergency, but he had never encountered conditions as severe as what he was witnessing during this unprecedented storm system. He had been carefully navigating flooded roads and fallen trees when he heard distinctive crying sounds coming from the direction of the Little Pigeon River, which had swollen to nearly 4 times its normal size due to the unprecedented rainfall. The sounds were unmistakably those of a young bear cub in severe distress calling for its mother with the desperate, high-pitched vocalizations that cubs make when they are frightened, lost, or facing immediate life-threatening danger. The ranger immediately radioed for emergency wildlife rescue assistance, knowing that every minute of delay could mean the difference between life and death for whatever animal was in distress. Dr. Walsh and her emergency response team immediately prepared for what they knew would be an extremely dangerous rescue operation. Bear cub rescues were always challenging under normal conditions, but attempting one during a major storm with severe flooding conditions posed extraordinary risks for both the human rescuers and the animal they were trying to save. The team loaded their specialized emergency response vehicle with all available rescue equipment, including ropes, flotation devices, emergency medical supplies, and their portable veterinary treatment kit. They also brought their emergency inflatable rescue boat, although the conditions might make it too dangerous to deploy. When they arrived at the coordinates provided by Ranger Bradley, the conditions were far worse than they had expected. Based on radio reports, the Little Pigeon River had transformed from a peaceful mountain stream into a raging torrent of muddy brown water filled with debris, fallen trees, and dangerous obstacles. The current was so powerful that it had carved entirely new channels through areas that were normally dry land, creating a constantly changing and unpredictable landscape of dangerous water flows that made any rescue attempt extremely hazardous. In the middle of this chaos, approximately 30 feet from either shore and completely surrounded by the most dangerous part of the current, was a tiny black bear cub, estimated to be only about 3 months old, clinging desperately to a partially submerged log that was being continuously battered by the powerful current and floating debris. The cub was completely soaked, exhausted, and crying continuously for his mother, who was nowhere to be seen throughout the surrounding area. The little bear was clearly weakening from hypothermia, exhaustion, and the stress of fighting to maintain his grip on the slippery log. The rescue team quickly assessed the extremely dangerous situation and realized they were facing one of the most challenging animal rescue operations any of them had ever encountered. The current was far too strong and dangerous for any human rescuer to safely enter the water without being swept away to their death. Traditional rescue equipment would be completely ineffective in the chaotic conditions created by the massive flood waters. Floating debris created deadly traps that could kill or seriously injure anyone attempting to navigate the treacherous waters. Dr. Torres suggested deploying their emergency inflatable rescue boat, but the amount of debris in the water made navigation extremely hazardous, with fallen trees, branches, and other large obstacles, creating a constantly shifting maze of potential death traps for anyone attempting to reach the stranded cub. As they were frantically planning their rescue approach and trying to identify any possible way to safely reach the bear cub, something absolutely extraordinary happened that would challenge everything they understood about animal behavior, interspecies cooperation, and the capacity for compassion that exists throughout the natural world. A large dog suddenly appeared on the opposite bank of the raging river, emerging from the dense forest, as if responding specifically to the cub's desperate distress calls. The dog was clearly a German Shepherd mix, who appeared to be well-fed, healthy, and cared for, but was not wearing any collar identification tags or other signs of human ownership. He seemed to have emerged from the forest with obvious purpose and determination. What happened next defied all scientific understanding of predator-prey relationships, territorial behavior, and the natural instincts that typically govern interactions between different species, particularly between domestic dogs and wild bears. The dog carefully assessed the dangerous situation for several minutes, watching the struggling cub and apparently calculating the risks and challenges involved in any rescue attempt. Then he deliberately entered the treacherous floodwaters and began swimming directly toward the stranded bear cub with obvious determination and courage. Dr. Walsh and her entire rescue team watched in absolute amazement as the dog navigated the treacherous current with remarkable skill and intelligence, avoiding floating debris using his powerful swimming ability to fight against the current and making steady progress toward the cub despite the life-threatening conditions. This was completely unprecedented behavior that contradicted everything known about canine and ursine relationships, as dogs and bears were natural competitors who typically avoided each other or showed territorial aggression when forced into contact. When the heroic dog reached the partially submerged log, where the exhausted cub was desperately clinging for his life, he carefully positioned himself to provide additional stability and warmth for the frightened young bear. The cub immediately responded to the dog's presence with obvious relief and gratitude, moving closer to the larger animal and actually climbing onto the dog's broad back for security and warmth. The dog then began the incredibly dangerous journey back to shore while carrying the bear cub and fighting against the powerful current that threatened to sweep them both downstream to their deaths. The rescue team positioned themselves along the bank to assist if the unlikely pair encountered difficulties they couldn't overcome. For nearly 25 minutes, that felt like hours to the anxious human observers. The courageous dog struggled against the relentless floodwaters, while the tiny cub held tightly to his thick fur with determination and trust that was remarkable for such a young wild animal. The sight was simultaneously terrifying and inspiring as the unlikely pair worked together to survive the life-threatening conditions that had already claimed numerous animal lives throughout the region during the unprecedented storm. The dog showed incredible strength, endurance, and determination as he fought against currents that would have easily overpowered a human rescuer while carefully protecting the precious cargo he was carrying to safety. When the exhausted dog finally reached shallow water near the bank where the rescue team was waiting, the humans were able to assist in pulling both animals to safety and begin immediate emergency medical treatment. The bear cub was suffering from severe hypothermia, exhaustion, frightened confusion, and the early stages of shock, but was miraculously alive, thanks entirely to the heroic actions of the mysterious dog who had risked his own life to save a member of a completely different species. Dr. Walsh immediately began emergency treatment for the cub, using warming blankets, heated fluids, and medications to counteract hypothermia, while Lisa Rodriguez carefully examined the dog for injuries from his ordeal in the dangerous floodwaters. Both animals were suffering from exhaustion exposure and the physical stress of their struggle against the powerful current, but remarkably neither had sustained serious physical trauma from their harrowing ordeal in the life-threatening flood conditions. The dog remained close to the bear cub throughout the entire initial medical examination, showing obvious concern for the young animal's welfare and displaying protective behavior that was completely unprecedented in the experience of the wildlife rescue professionals. After stabilizing both animals and ensuring they were out of immediate medical danger, the team carefully transported them to the rescue center where they could provide ongoing care, monitoring, and treatment in a controlled environment with access to advanced medical equipment and specialized facilities. The dog continued to show remarkable gentleness and protectiveness toward the cub during transport and after arrival at the facility, displaying behavior that amazed and deeply moved the experienced wildlife professionals who had never witnessed such profound interspecies compassion. Over the following days and weeks, the unlikely pair formed an extraordinary and deeply touching bond that challenged scientific understanding of animal psychology and social behavior. The dog seemed to instinctively understand that the orphaned cub needed protection, comfort, and surrogate parental care. The dog took on the role of protector and surrogate parent, providing essential warmth through body contact companionship that prevented the depression often seen in orphaned cubs and emotional support that was crucial for the cub's psychological development and recovery from trauma. The cub, who was named Storm by the rescue staff in honor of the dramatic circumstances of his rescue, began to thrive under the dog's devoted care, gaining weight, developing normally, and showing healthy curiosity and playfulness despite the severe trauma of separation from his mother. Extensive efforts to locate Storm's biological mother throughout the Great Smoky Mountains were unfortunately unsuccessful, as the violent weather had scattered and displaced the local bear population, making tracking impossible in the chaotic aftermath of the unprecedented storm system. The dog, whom the grateful rescue staff named Hero, had apparently been living independently in the forest for an extended period, but showed clear signs of previous domestication and training, suggesting he had once belonged to a human family. His origin remained a complete mystery, despite extensive efforts by the rescue center and local authorities to locate his owners through social media, missing pet databases, and community outreach programs. The rescue center found themselves facing an absolutely unprecedented situation, as they had never before dealt with an interspecies adoption between a domestic dog and a wild bear cub. The relationship was clearly beneficial for Storm's physical and psychological development, but raised complex questions about wildlife rehabilitation protocols and the long-term implications for both animals. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a renowned animal behaviorist from the University of Tennessee, was consulted about the highly unusual situation, and after extensive observation determined that the relationship was providing essential psychological and emotional support for the traumatized orphaned cub. After 6 months of careful monitoring and care, Storm had grown into a healthy, vigorous juvenile bear, but remained closely bonded to Hero, who continued to provide companionship and even seemed to be teaching the young bear important survival skills through play exploration and behavioral modeling. The decision was made by the rescue team to maintain the unique relationship as long as it remained beneficial for both animals. The rescue center modified their facilities to accommodate the unusual pair and developed entirely new protocols for managing interspecies relationships in wildlife rehabilitation. Storm's incredible rescue story gained international attention as videos and photographs of his remarkable relationship with Hero spread rapidly across social media platforms, reaching millions of people around the world who were deeply touched by the unlikely friendship and the heroic rescue that had brought them together. Wildlife experts, researchers, and animal behaviorists from universities and research institutions around the world began studying the case, as it provided unique and unprecedented insights into animal empathy, cooperation, and the capacity for different species to form meaningful, lasting bonds. The story was featured in National Geographic documentaries, wildlife conservation magazines, and educational programs that reached audiences worldwide, inspiring new research into interspecies relationships and animal cognition. Years later, after careful preparation and gradual conditioning, Storm was successfully released into a protected area of the Great Smoky Mountains, where he could live as a wild bear, while Hero remained at the rescue center, where he became a beloved ambassador animal, helping with educational programs about wildlife conservation and interspecies cooperation. The rescue center established the Storm and Hero research program to study and support other documented cases of interspecies cooperation in wildlife rescue situations. Their ongoing work contributed to revolutionary new understanding of animal emotions, social bonds, and the capacity for compassion that exists throughout the animal kingdom. Storm's rescue became one of the most thoroughly documented and extensively studied cases of animal heroism in wildlife rehabilitation history, inspiring new research programs at universities worldwide focused on the cognitive and emotional capabilities of both domestic and wild animals. The story continues to inspire wildlife rehabilitators, conservationists, and animal lovers around the world, proving that heroism, compassion, and love transcend all boundaries between species. The immediate aftermath of Storm's rescue revealed the true extent of the devastation caused by the unprecedented weather system throughout the Great Smoky Mountains. National Park, over 300 trees had fallen across major wildlife corridors, disrupting migration patterns and forcing animals into unfamiliar territories where they faced increased predation risks and competition for limited resources. Emergency response teams from multiple state and federal agencies worked around the clock to assess the damage and provide assistance to displaced wildlife populations. The storm had created what wildlife biologists described as a perfect storm of ecological disruption that would have lasting impacts on animal behavior and population dynamics for years to come. Dr. Jennifer Walsh found herself coordinating not just Storm's individual care, but also a massive regional wildlife emergency response effort that involved dozens of rescue organizations, veterinary clinics, and volunteer groups from across the southeastern United States. The Appalachian Wildlife Rescue Center became the coordinating hub for emergency operations, as their advanced facilities and experienced staff made them uniquely qualified to handle the unprecedented volume of wildlife casualties that began arriving from throughout the storm-affected region. In the weeks following Storm's rescue, the center treated over 200 injured and orphaned animals, including dozens of bear cubs who had been separated from their mothers during the violent weather, creating an unexpected opportunity to study Storm's unique relationship with Hero in comparison to more traditional rehabilitation approaches. Dr. Michael Torres began documenting the differences in recovery rates, social development, and behavioral adaptation between orphaned cubs who received traditional human care and Storm, who was being raised in the unprecedented interspecies partnership with Hero. The preliminary results were remarkable. Storm showed accelerated development in critical survival skills, including foraging behavior, threat assessment, and social interaction patterns that typically took much longer to develop in cubs raised solely by human caretakers. Hero's influence appeared to provide Storm with behavioral modeling that was somehow more effective than traditional rehabilitation techniques. The dog's natural instincts and behavioral patterns seemed to complement the cub's developmental needs in ways that human caregivers, despite their expertise and dedication, simply could not replicate. Lisa Rodriguez began conducting detailed behavioral analysis sessions, documenting every interaction between Storm and Hero using high-definition video equipment and sophisticated animal behavior analysis software that could detect subtle communication patterns and emotional responses. Her research revealed that Hero and Storm had developed a complex communication system that included specific vocalizations, physical gestures, and behavioral cues that allowed them to coordinate activities, share information about potential threats, and provide mutual comfort during stressful situations. The communication patterns were so sophisticated that they appeared to represent a form of interspecies language that had evolved naturally through their close association and mutual dependence. This discovery attracted the attention of linguistics researchers and animal communication specialists from major universities worldwide. Dr. Sarah Chen from the University of California, Berkeley, arrived at the rescue center to conduct extensive studies of the communication patterns between Hero and Storm. Her research focused on whether the observed behaviors represented true language development or simply sophisticated behavioral conditioning. Her initial findings suggested that both animals were actively learning and adapting their communication methods, indicating genuine linguistic development rather than simple conditioning. This discovery had profound implications for understanding animal cognition and the evolution of communication across species boundaries. Meanwhile, the search for Hero's original family continued through increasingly sophisticated methods, including DNA analysis, social media campaigns, and coordination with animal shelters and rescue organizations throughout the southeastern United States. Detective Carlos Rodriguez from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation volunteered his expertise in missing persons cases to help develop new search strategies for locating Hero's family. The investigation revealed that Hero had likely been missing for at least 6 months before appearing to rescue Storm. Veterinary examination revealed that Hero had been living independently in the wilderness for an extended period, but had maintained excellent physical condition, suggesting remarkable survival skills and adaptability. The dog showed no signs of malnutrition, disease, or injury that would be expected from prolonged wilderness survival. Behavioral analysis indicated that Hero possessed extraordinary intelligence and problem-solving abilities that exceeded typical domestic dog capabilities, leading some researchers to speculate that he might represent a unique genetic lineage or had received specialized training before his wilderness period. The mystery of Hero's background became a significant focus of investigation, as understanding his history could provide crucial insights into the remarkable rescue behavior he had displayed and his ongoing relationship with Storm. Months of investigation eventually led to a breakthrough when a family from eastern Kentucky contacted the rescue center after seeing Hero's photograph in a viral social media post about Storm's rescue. The Morrison family had lost their beloved German Shepherd named Max during a camping trip in the Great Smoky Mountains 8 months earlier, when he had disappeared during a thunderstorm remarkably similar to the one during which he had rescued Storm. Genetic testing confirmed that Hero was indeed Max, the Morrison family's missing dog, but the reunion raised complex ethical and emotional questions about the future of both Hero and Storm. The Morrison family, consisting of parents John and Mary Morrison and their 2 teenage children, had been devastated by Max's disappearance and had conducted extensive searches throughout the national park for months without success. When they learned about Max's heroic rescue of Storm and his ongoing role as the cub's surrogate parent, they faced an impossible decision between reclaiming their beloved family pet and allowing him to continue the unprecedented interspecies relationship that had saved Storm's life. The situation became even more complex when Storm showed obvious distress and anxiety during brief separations from Hero, suggesting that breaking their bond could cause serious psychological trauma to the young bear. Dr. Elizabeth Hamilton from Harvard University was brought in as an expert consultant to help develop a solution that would serve the best interests of all parties involved, including both animal welfare considerations and the legitimate rights of Hero's original family. After extensive consultation with animal behaviorists, wildlife rehabilitation experts, and legal specialists, an unprecedented custody arrangement was developed that allowed Hero to remain at the rescue center while providing regular visitation opportunities for the Morrison family. The arrangement also included provisions for Hero's eventual return to his family once Storm had been successfully released into the wild and no longer required surrogate parental care. This solution satisfied legal requirements while prioritizing animal welfare and scientific research opportunities. The Morrison family's willingness to temporarily sacrifice their reunion with their beloved pet for the benefit of an orphaned wild animal became another inspiring element of the story that captured public attention and demonstrated human compassion and understanding. John Morrison, a veterinarian himself, understood the critical importance of maintaining the bond between Hero and Storm during the crucial developmental period and made the difficult decision to delay their family reunion in the interest of both animals' welfare. The extended timeline also provided researchers with additional opportunities to study the relationship and document findings that would benefit future wildlife rehabilitation efforts and contribute to scientific understanding of interspecies relationships. As Storm grew larger and more independent, the nature of his relationship with Hero evolved from dependent infant and surrogate parent to more equal companions who engaged in complex play behaviors, exploration activities, and mutual protection. Hero continued to demonstrate remarkable patience and gentleness as Storm's size and strength increased, even when the young bear's playful behavior became rough or potentially dangerous. The dog never showed aggression or defensive behavior, instead redirecting Storm's energy into appropriate activities. Storm's development under Hero's guidance exceeded all expectations, as he learned advanced survival skills, foraging techniques, and threat assessment abilities that typically required much longer to develop in traditionally rehabilitated cubs. By his first birthday, Storm had grown to nearly 80 pounds and was demonstrating all the behaviors necessary for successful wild release. But his bond with Hero remained strong, creating new challenges for the rehabilitation team. The decision to proceed with Storm's release required careful planning and gradual conditioning to prepare both animals for permanent separation. The process involved slowly increasing the duration of separations while providing both animals with alternative sources of stimulation and companionship. Storm's release took place on a beautiful spring morning in a remote section of the Great Smoky Mountains that had been carefully selected for its abundant food sources, water availability, and minimal human activity. The release was documented by a team of researchers and wildlife photographers who captured the emotional moment when Storm walked into the forest as a fully capable wild bear. Hero remained at the rescue center for several more months, helping with educational programs and serving as a companion for newly arrived orphaned animals before eventually returning to the Morrison family. The reunion between Hero and his original family was emotional and touching, but the dog quickly readjusted to domestic life while maintaining the extraordinary intelligence and empathy that had made his rescue of Storm possible. Storm's tracking collar provided regular updates on his progress in the wild and confirmed that he was thriving as an independent bear who had successfully integrated into the local population. The relationship between Storm and Hero became the subject of a best-selling book documentary film and numerous scientific papers that contributed to revolutionary advances in understanding animal cognition, emotion, and interspecies cooperation. The Rescue Center established an annual Storm and Hero Day to celebrate their remarkable story and to promote awareness of wildlife conservation and the importance of protecting natural habitats. Educational programs based on their story reached millions of children worldwide, inspiring new generations of wildlife conservationists and demonstrating the powerful connections that exist throughout the animal kingdom. The scientific research conducted during Storm's rehabilitation led to new techniques and protocols that improved success rates for orphaned wildlife throughout North America and influenced wildlife rehabilitation practices worldwide. Storm's story also inspired legislative changes that increased funding for wildlife rehabilitation programs and strengthened protections for critical habitat areas throughout the Appalachian region. 10 years after his rescue, Storm was spotted by researchers with a family of his own, demonstrating that his unusual upbringing had not prevented him from successfully reproducing and passing on his genes to future generations. Hero lived to the age of 12 and passed away peacefully at the Morrison family home. But his legacy continued through the countless animals and people whose lives had been touched by his extraordinary act of heroism. The Storm and Hero Memorial Fund, established after Hero's death, continues to support wildlife rescue operations and research into animal cognition, providing ongoing benefits for wildlife conservation efforts worldwide. Their story remains one of the most powerful examples of interspecies cooperation and animal heroism ever documented, proving that compassion, courage, and love exist throughout the natural world in forms that continue to amaze and inspire. If this incredible story of heroism, friendship, and the extraordinary power of interspecies cooperation touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share it with someone who believes that compassion, courage, and love exist throughout the animal kingdom in forms we are only beginning to understand. Sometimes heroes come in the most unexpected forms, and sometimes the strongest bonds are those that form between the most unlikely friends, proving that love, protection, and sacrifice transcend all species boundaries and reveal the universal nature of compassion that connects all living beings. If this incredible story of heroism, friendship, and the extraordinary power of interspecies cooperation touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button and share it with someone who believes that compassion, courage, and love exist throughout the animal kingdom in forms we are only beginning to understand. Sometimes heroes come in the most unexpected forms, and sometimes the strongest bonds are those that form between the most unlikely friends, proving that love, protection, and sacrifice transcend all species boundaries and reveal the universal nature of compassion that connects all living beings.